Today's episode of Acoustic Tuesday is for those of you who are afflicted with gas. Yes, for you guitar geeks who have guitar acquisition syndrome, this episode is specifically designed for you. You're going to learn my 5-step framework for evaluating guitars, meaning now you can walk into a shop, you can shop online with this framework in mind and actually come up with a choice that you feel confident in that will ultimately lead you to the guitar of your dreams. So without further ado, let's dive into this 5-step framework that will help you ultimately purchase guitars. So all guitar geeks need to call their spouses or significant others into the room. Yes, guitar geek guys, call in your wives or call in your girlfriends. Guitar geek gals, please call in your husbands or your boyfriends. And of course, if you're a young guitar geek, make sure your parents are in the room because this will help you with your purchasing power when it comes to buying a guitar. Step number 1 in my evaluation framework is to evaluate the guitar's looks. Yes, the guitar's looks. Now, I know what you're thinking already. You might be sighing, saying, Tone, the looks, aren't you going to talk about sound? Here's why step number 1 is the looks. You need to be attracted to your guitar. The guitar needs to knock your socks off. The guitar needs to call to you from the other side of the room saying, hey, pick me, pick me. Now, this doesn't mean the guitar has to be blingy and covered in inlay. This just means that it looks attractive to you. For me, it's a nice vintage style guitar, understated looks, not a lot of inlay, not a lot of bling, but very stately looking. For others, it might mean a presentation series type vibe, like inlay all over the fretboard. That's fine, but make sure the guitar looks attractive to you. Make sure you want to pick up the guitar, because ultimately, the more you pick up the guitar, the better you're going to get at guitar, the more fun you'll have, the more progress you'll make, and ultimately, you'll be playing the guitar you bought much, much more, well, if you like the way that it looks. So yes, step number 1 is evaluate the guitar's looks. Step number 2 is, you may have guessed it, evaluate the guitar's sound. Now, I want you to play this guitar of your dreams or this guitar that you're considering, and I want you to stop playing it and think, I can still feel that guitar resonating in my body. This guitar sounds so amazing, I can't see myself without it. That's exactly how I want you to feel. But here's the deal. That means something different for everyone. So I want you to evaluate the guitar's sound based on what you like, okay? And this gets a little bit hairy because a lot of times we seek out a second or a third opinion, and I think those are extremely valuable. I'm not discounting those at all. But ultimately, you will be the one playing the guitar. So when you're shopping for a guitar, I want you to play it yourself and get a sense of the sound from the player's perspective. And then I want you to listen to the guitar, listen to somebody else playing it, and actually hear the guitar from the audience's or the listener's perspective. This will give you the full sense of what the guitar sounds like and ultimately whether you like it or not. Now, if a guitar sounds good to you, then it is good. Bottom line, if it sounds good, it is good. And again, this is for you, not somebody else, because you will be the one playing the guitar. So yes, step number 2 is sound. Step number 3 is to evaluate the guitar's playability. Now, there's a little caveat to this particular step in the framework because playability can mean so many different things, but I'm talking about the things that we cannot change, the things that are actually inherent to the guitar. What do I mean by this? We'll get there in a second, but you can change the action on a guitar. You can change the string height of a guitar, right? You can change that by getting the guitar set up. So I'm not talking so much setup here or getting the guitar tweaked. I'm talking about things that are inherent to the guitar. Things like nut width, things like neck profile. Is it a fat baseball style neck or is it a skinny like Taylor, almost like a flat profile neck? I'm talking about the string spacing, right? Are the strings super wide apart or are they super tight together? These are things we cannot change. And I'll also throw into the comfort factor the body size. Is it a big size guitar or is it a smaller size guitar? These all factor into playability, and I want you to make sure that you evaluate those when you're trying out guitars because those are the things you simply cannot change. A setup you can change all day, but things like neck profile, nut width, and string spacing, body size, those are pretty much you get what you get. So make sure to evaluate the guitar's playability. Step number 4 is the guitar's versatility. I want you to evaluate the guitar's versatility. Now, this may not be applicable for every single guitar geek right now, because some of you might be thinking, you know what, I'm searching out a very specific guitar for a very specific niche in my guitar collection, right? I want a 12 fret parlor guitar with a V-shaped neck that's perfect for fingerstyle because that's all I'm gonna play on it. That's fine. For those of you in that category, it's less about versatility, right? But for a lot of us, we want our guitar to grow and flex with us on our guitar journey. And if that's the case, if you find yourself finger picking a lot, maybe run the guitar through a couple flat picking licks and see if the guitar responds to flat picking as well as it does to finger picking, or vice versa. Let's say you're searching for a bluegrass dreadnought because you love flat picking, but you do see some finger picking in your future, a la Doc Watson. So, of course, check out the dreadnoughts, but also put the dreadnought through its finger picking paces to see if it keeps up, to see if it still offers the sound that you like, to see that it is indeed a versatile instrument, because you want your instrument to be alongside you for your entire guitar journey, regardless of the style that you choose, okay? So make sure to evaluate the guitar's versatility. This doesn't mean it has to be a Swiss Army knife, a jack of all trades. This just means that, quite simply, it can do other things well. Maybe it does one thing extremely well, but it can do other things well also. So make sure to evaluate the guitar's versatility. And then the last and final step, step number 5, is evaluate the guitar's level of inspiration. This is very difficult to do, but I want you to know that each guitar has a story, and the guitar that inspires you the most generally has a story behind it. So this is something to take into consideration when you're purchasing a guitar, especially a vintage guitar. In fact, I have a story of my own I'll share here in just a moment, but even if it's your first brand new guitar, that guitar still may have a story. You might be beginning that guitar's story that very day when you purchase it, right? So you have to take into consideration that the guitar is meant to inspire. The guitar is meant to bring joy and fulfillment into your life. And you have to take into account this X factor of inspiration. When I bought my, it's a 1935 Martin Single 017. That guitar has this crazy story. It was in a barn, it was in shambles, it was in pieces. It got reassembled and put back together. Come to find out, the guitar was originally found in Helena in somebody's barn, and it came to me, obviously used, but the original owner contacted me and gave me all the original parts. Of course, they weren't working, but to have that piece of the puzzle is so cool. And that's what I'm talking about with inspiration. You can call it mojo, you can call it motivation, you can call it the X factor, you can call it magic, you can call it whatever you want, but make sure to take that into account when you're evaluating a guitar. And even if it's brand new, again, remember, when you purchase that guitar, day one, you're starting that guitar's story. And I think that in and of itself is a really cool feeling when you leave the store with the case in your hand thinking, man, this is gonna be my partner in crime. This is gonna be my best bud through thick and thin. It's a really, really good feeling. So just a very quick recap in how to evaluate a guitar for purchase. Number 1, evaluate its looks. It should look attractive. It should beg to you to pick it up and play it. Step number 2, evaluate the guitar's sound. Yes, this is important, but remember, this is through your eyes, through your ears. This is how we're evaluating the guitar. We're not comparing it to what other people think. This is what you think about the guitar in question. So again, we got looks, we got playability, we got looks, we got sound, then we have step 3, playability, then we have step 4, versatility, and then we have the last one, the X factor, step number 5, inspiration. So please take those into account when you're purchasing a guitar. This could be in person at a store, this could be online, but kind of run through that framework. In fact, a little bit later on today's show, you're gonna have a chance to run through this very framework on 3 separate guitars. Yes, today's show is pretty much dedicated to guitar acquisition syndrome, and I cannot wait to dive in. But first, if I missed any element that is necessary to evaluate a guitar, please leave it in the comments. Is there something that's really important to you that I failed to mention on my list that you want to share with your fellow guitar geeks? Please leave a comment below and let's start a discussion on how best to approach evaluating a guitar. Again, leave those comments below. I cannot wait to read them and feature them on a future episode of Acoustic Tuesday. All right, today you've already learned the 5-step framework, my 5-step framework for evaluating a guitar. We're also going to take a look at another guitar that quite simply can't really be categorized. And then we're gonna conclude the show with another shootout. Yes, we're gonna pit Boucher guitars versus Bourgeois guitars. But it's not gonna be so much the guitar manufacturing end of things, it's gonna be more a specific model from each company. We're gonna pit them head to head, and that's all coming up right after this. I'm Tony Policastro, and this is the Acoustic Tuesday Show. Guitar geeks, unite. Welcome to Acoustic Tuesday, episode number 139. This is a show where you're going to learn about guitar gear, acoustic artists, and get inspired to live your very best acoustic life. As with all episodes of Acoustic Tuesday, I'm going to share with you my guitar geek list for the week. And this week just so happens to be, well, the list is composed purely of awesome guitars that you need to know about. One that can't be categorized, two that are the same but different, one that has an insane story behind it because it was custom designed. It's gonna be a good day, but prior to getting into that, we gotta hit a very important item of business, and of course that is Guitar Geek Trivia. Yes, your question today is focused on one of the builders we'll be featuring on later in the show. And I'm excited because this was a new factoidal nugget to me, and I'm excited to ask you the question to see if, well, you get it right. So without further ado, here is your Guitar Geek Trivia. Prior to setting up operations in Lewiston, Maine in 1992, Dana Bourgeois built and prototyped acoustic guitars for Martin and what other guitar builder? Was it A, Bob Taylor, B, Ren Ferguson, C, Paul Reed Smith, or D, Preston Thompson? Go ahead and ponder that, and at the end of the show, I'll be sure to give you the answer. Now, moving right along our Guitar Geek list, now I should have also mentioned that I have the results from the Martin versus Taylor episode, and I can't wait to get into those, but let's look at a guitar first before we do that. Let's cleanse our palate, and then we'll dive back into that whole melee. So I want to feature a guitar right now that was sent to me for review from the folks at McPherson. McPherson. I hope I said it right in one of those two iterations. This is their Sable model from their Carbon series, and this particular guitar is aesthetically stunning. Now, I have some thoughts about carbon fiber guitars, and I'm going to share those with you here in just a moment, but first, so you get a sense of this carbon fiber guitar, this McPherson Sable model, I want you to hear the review that I did. So, without further ado, that's the second time I've said that. Here it is. The McPherson Sable is visually striking, and yes, it is 100% carbon fiber. I'm talking the top is carbon fiber, the back is carbon fiber, and yes, the neck is carbon fiber as well. Let's get into some of the details, and I think you probably noticed one of the most striking ones, and that is the top. Yes, it's carbon fiber, and yes, it has that kind of typical carbon fiber weave, but there's a little twist. There's a honeycomb pattern on the top, which I find incredibly visually appealing and just an overall treat to look at. Also on the top, you've got the McPherson offset sound hole, and included with the guitar is a feedback buster. So if you do plug it in and find yourself prone to feedback, you can plop that in there and it'll reduce it significantly. As I mentioned, this guitar does come equipped with a pickup. You can access the volume control right in the sound hole. The bridge is composite, as is the saddle and bridge pins. And let's move to the neck. I want to actually spend some time on the neck because there's a lot of really cool features on this neck. Yes, it's made of all carbon fiber. I also want to call attention to the composite nut, which is 1 3/4 inches. I find it very comfortable to play. It's got a shallow or low C profile, and it's kind of got this beautiful satin finish, and my fingers just literally slide on the neck. I don't find myself getting hung up. It's very comfortable to play. Bar chords are easier on it, and overall the action is pretty darn low and comfortable as well. A couple more notes on the neck itself. It is cantilevered, which means that the fingerboard extension actually hovers above the top of the guitar, which allows the top to really reach its full potential in terms of maximum vibrating surface. And I think you'll hear it when I play it. This guitar produces a ton of sound. All right, so now that you have a sense of this carbon fiber guitar from McPherson, the Sable model, I have to say some honest thoughts here, okay? So I would say I'm about 5-ish years into my journey into carbon fiber land, as we can call it. And I started this journey extremely skeptical of all things carbon fiber. First of all, I was like, it's machine made. Everybody uses the same material. There's no variation. It's sterile feeling. I'm sure the sound is sterile, and I'm sure they're all going to sound the same. Well, that couldn't be any further from the truth. I've played a lot of different carbon fiber instruments. I played Journey Instruments, carbon fiber instrument from them, Cargo Acoustics, Rain Song, Emerald guitars, now McPherson guitars, Close guitars. I played a lot of different carbon fiber instruments, and I have to say this, although it is the same material in its physical property, each company treats it in a different way, and each company's guitars issue a very different sound. There's a lot of depth to all these different carbon fiber instruments. And at first, I was sure it was going to be very one-dimensional, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. And I was happy to bring this McPherson Sable into the fold because this guitar totally wowed me. And I have to say that aesthetically, it's striking because of that honeycomb top. And they have a couple of different patterns as well, but there's a couple of factors that I didn't even consider that now that I'm playing it more and more, I'm starting to realize. The back on the McPherson has a little bit of a texture to it, so it's very comfortable to hold. It doesn't slip around at all, which I thought was very cool as well. And I should also mention that the McPherson has this really wonderful mid scoop. Like it has a strong bass presence, it has a strong treble presence, but the mid is scooped out just a little bit. So it's almost akin to a rosewood sounding instrument. Now, just to offer a little bit of comparison, Emerald guitars on the other end of the spectrum, I admire a ton and love them also. So McPherson and Emerald are like right here, just duking it out in my mind. And Emerald, their tonal profile is a little bit more even. High-end articulation with great low-end presence, but the middle strings don't get lost. So it's really cool to have both of these companies kind of come into the fold and offer something very valuable to us guitar geeks. I should also mention that these carbon fiber instruments are extremely durable, and in the case of the McPherson Sable, you've got Evo frets, which are very resistant to wear. The entire thing's carbon fiber. It can sit outside of its case, and I actually leave it in my family room, which has a wood stove in it, and the wood stove goes on at night, and the wood stove goes off during the day, so the temperature fluctuations are pretty drastic in that room, but I'm pretty confident and happy to say that I have experienced little to no tuning issues with that guitar, with it out on a stand. Not in the case, obviously not humidified because it's carbon fiber. So pretty awesome material, and I think the folks at McPherson are really offering an incredible instrument, both aesthetically and tonally. They kind of think of everything. It's very comfortable to play. I enjoy playing the hell out of it. In fact, I wanted you to get a little bit more sense of what happens in the carbon fiber manufacturing process. So I found this wonderful video of the folks at McPherson crafting these beautiful carbon fiber instruments. So here it is. All right, now you've been inside the McPherson Carbon Series factory and you know a little bit more about it, so hopefully that was a fun little trip for all of you guitar geeks, and I know it certainly was for me. Like I said, I'm kind of slowly trudging along in my carbon fiber journey and just learning more and more and more and really getting excited about it because it's a great alternative. I'm not saying it's going to replace actual organic real wood anytime soon. In fact, I don't think that will ever be the case, but I think it's just another tone that us guitar geeks get to use in our tonal palette. We're artists, you know, we can paint like Bob Ross, pretty little trees, but we get to paint pretty little melodies with all these different tonal offerings these guitar manufacturers make for us. Anyways, I'll get a little bit less poetic and dig back into the show. In fact, I want to go back into probably the most contested episode in Acoustic Tuesday history. Yes, episode 137, we talked about Martin guitars versus Taylor guitars. And at the beginning of the show, I said, you know what? This is probably going to be the most controversial episode of Acoustic Tuesday yet, and it did not disappoint. It indeed was. In fact, I totaled the votes from that episode, so we will have a definitive answer. Plus, I never gave you my opinion on which one won, and I'll tell you that here. But I want to first get to a couple comments that were left on the show. So comment one comes from Ryan B., and he says this. His vote's for Martin. Martin, I love the clarity of the Taylor, but I think they lack bass and are a little too bright. Very comfy to play though. Martins have tons of character that I love. Well, thank you, Ryan, for chiming in and casting your Guitar Geek vote. Our next comment comes from Fred W., and he has an interesting perspective. He says, Martin versus Taylor is like Ford versus Chevy. Sure, one is probably favored over the other, but I'm willing to wager that either one will take you where you want to go. I thought that was a pretty awesome kind of diplomatic approach to this fight, if you will. Very, very great perspective on that, Fred. Thank you for leaving that comment. Our next one comes from Patrick T., and he says this. I'm kind of with Colorado Kyle on that. Martin was always the gold standard to me. My only real experience with either, though, is playing them in stores or borrowing them from friends. I do love the tones from both. So awesome to get that perspective as well on kind of the stigma attached to each brand. Now, really interestingly enough, after that episode, Colorado Kyle, well, he had a birthday, and Colorado Kyle purchased himself a Taylor GS Mini, a Koa Taylor GS Mini. In fact, I got a text from him this weekend. He's like, dude, I'm learning the F chord. And it's amazing. It's opening up this whole world of possibilities. So happy birthday to you, Colorado Kyle. That was back on April 14th, and I'm so happy that you are becoming a guitar geek. I figured by proxy you would end up a guitar geek, and sure enough, here you are in the fold as a guitar geek. So cheers on your new Taylor GS Mini Koa. Our next comment comes from Wanda Adams Maru, and she says this, Martin, Tony, did I doze off or did you not mention the most famous Martin of all? Trigger, Willys Martin N20? Let's talk tone and durability. I did not mention that, Wanda. You did not doze off. It's just, you know, when you think of Martin's history and the actual artist lineup within the Martin umbrella, I mean, that could be a show that's 3 hours long. And I don't want to do that to you all. I mean, I guess lately I kind of do. I'm liking these longer episodes. But anyways, point taken, Wanda. Yes, Willie Nelson's Martin N20, also commonly known as Trigger, is certainly an iconic Martin, and good catch. Good way to keep this guitar geek true. I did not mention that. Our next comment from John H. says this, I've been playing Martins 53 years this June. If you've got the nerve to play one yourself, there's nothing like it. They are not advertised with a Rolls Royce for nothing. Very awesome perspective on that. And there were so many great comments within the show. I'll get to the numbers here in a moment. I've got one more comment I want to share. This one comes from Everett Shutt. He says, Taylors are great if you need an acoustic to stand out in a busy live mix. A Martin tends to have a more boomy sound, tricky for sound engineers both live and in the studio. However, if you need an acoustic to play the first part or as the only instrument to accompany a singer, I think the Martin wins. I own both, by the way, so I think a draw is a perfect result. Now on that, I caught a lot of heat for calling it a tie at the end. Now, I just presented some categories and simply shared my opinions. But it was cool to have such great conversation in the comments. And I really never gave my vote, and I would like to cast my vote. I'll get to my vote in a moment, but I do want to give you the actual hard numbers. So as of the filming of this episode, there have been 18,013 views of Acoustic Tuesday episode 137, which was Martin versus Taylor. There were 540 comments and counting, the most comments in Acoustic Tuesday history. And I went through each comment and tried to suss out whether it was a vote from Martin and Taylor. Now, I will say this. There were other just common Guitar Geek questions, so those obviously weren't counted in the vote. There were other people just saying, yep, in my opinion, it's a tie also. But I did get some hard vote numbers, and I have to say that Martin was the overwhelming winner in according to you Guitar Geeks. In fact, Martin votes accounted for 204 votes for Martin, while Taylor only garnered 93. I thought that was pretty astounding, but really cool. Again, just in summation, to see perspectives from both sides of the equation. Folks that were longtime Martin players, folks longtime Taylor players, folks just kind of in the middle, new folks that have been playing for a long time, folks that are just getting back into the guitar. It was so great to see all of you alongside one another, just having discussions and being really respectful about it. I know this is one of those things that people have strong opinions about, but even despite those strong opinions, there was some great conversations, some amazing points that were brought up, and even some factoids and stuff that I had a blast reading through. So I appreciate everybody that participated in that episode. I want to thank you all for your comments. What a treat to read those and just kind of think about things from a different perspective. Now on to my vote. Okay. There were a lot of comments about my Guitarsenal and how it's overwhelmingly Martin. And yes, that's true. So I guess judging by Guitarsenal numbers, I have 2 Taylors and I have probably 8 or 9 or 10. I'm just looking right now. Or 11. I think I actually have 11 Martin guitars. So I think I would cast my vote for Martin. But I think the vote is almost, it's tough for me to say because I like Taylor in certain respects. And one of the comments I saw, I didn't pull it, was like that I was afraid of upsetting either Martin or Taylor. And quite honestly, I'm not. I mean, Martin knows that Taylor exists and Taylor knows that Martin exists. I went on Taylor's podcast and talked about Martin guitars. I talked about Taylor guitars with Chris Martin when he was here in this studio. And I don't feel like it's this heavy competition, like I'm pulled or swayed towards one. Because of the manufacturer and because of my relationships with both manufacturers, I think is pretty darn good. I just think that, I guess we're all aware that different brands exist. And you know what? If you find the guitar that works for you, awesome. That's great. Play the guitar that works for you. It might be a Martin, it might be a Taylor, it might be something totally different. If it inspires you, if it motivates you, if it fulfills you and adds joy to your life, that's the guitar I want you to pick. So I guess if I was, had to cast a vote, it would be for Martin just because of the sheer number in my Guitarsenal. But I think Taylor is a darn good manufacturer as well, and I have 2 Taylor Dreadnoughts that I love for a very specific reason. They project like laser beams, and I love that, especially in a loud jam. Anyways, I digress. That's my vote. That's a little bit more philosophical than I wanted to get into, but let me bring the train back on the tracks here. I do want you to know that you can support the Acoustic Tuesday show. In fact, I'd love to bring back the Guitarsenal as a tradition here on the Acoustic Tuesday show. And I want to ask you to go to acoustictuesday.store. That'll go to a store. That website is a store where all of our Acoustic Tuesday merchandise lives. And I want you to specifically seek out the Guitarsenal shirt. Why? Because there's 3 steps I want you to follow. Step number 1, find that Guitarsenal shirt and purchase it. Get your favorite color, get it in your size, get it shipped directly to your door. Step number 2 is when that shirt arrives, I want you to put it on and take a picture amongst all of your guitars. Yes, all of your guitars. It could take some time, but I can tell you the picture is worth it because it's just so cool. It's so cool. And step number 3 is to upload that picture at acousticlife.tv. In fact, when you go there, there's a submit link in the top menu. You can click on it. You can upload your Guitarsenal picture, and then you can actually write a little description telling us what you have, what guitars they are, maybe what year they were made, how they came into your life, and then I'll go ahead and feature it on an upcoming episode of Acoustic Tuesday. In fact, I've been sharing those on Instagram as well. In fact, every Monday I share a Guitarsenal picture, and I believe it's Monday. But they have they comment on the coolest things in the Guitarsenals, saying how it inspires them and how it's just so cool to see all these different guitar manufacturers, different guitar collections. So please go ahead and submit your Guitarsenal picture at acousticlife.tv. I'd love to keep sharing those on the Acoustic Tuesday show. In fact, I'd be very grateful if you did that. And speaking of feeling grateful, speaking of gratitude, I would like to introduce to you Bradford M. Bradford M is from Arlington, Texas, and he's feeling grateful for his guitar. In fact, he's feeling grateful for his guitar because he ties some very cool things about starting his guitar journey and also how the guitar has helped him just in his own life. So without further ado, here's Bradford M. from Arlington, Texas.
Welcome to my guitar sanctuary. Well, it's more than guitar, it's art and music. I'm Bradford M. from exciting Arlington, Texas. So, welcome. First of all, my gratitude for Tony, you and your whole crew. You've been able to change my life, really. It's where my guitar has been a vital part in my saneness. um, and then, other than that, my nephew Matt, who some years ago loaned me his Yamaha LD10 without any restrictions. I kept it for 10 years, and it really helped me through some really, really tough times. So, Matt, you're my bud. And then there's my wife, who I'm eternally grateful for. And she's always been real supportive of all um, my efforts in music and my art. And I've and all my Guitarsenal too, for that matter. It's because she said okay, and so uh, you can't do better than this, really. Um, my life has been up and down just like everybody else's, and I I'm enjoying the heck out of everything that I'm doing with my music. I'm taking the opportunity to deep dive on everything, so it's great. So, uh, Tony, you guys are family, and so I'm really grateful for all of
All right, I want to thank Bradford M. for participating in our Guitar Gratitude segment. And if you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm grateful for my guitar, I would love to share, a thanks to my first guitar teacher. I would love to share a thanks to my spouse for putting up with my guitar habit. I would love to share just a thanks quite simply to my guitar or this very guitar community for helping me through the hard times and helping me celebrate the good times. If that's you, if you want to participate in the Guitar Gratitude segment, it's very easy. Just visit guitargratitude.com. And once you go to that website, you'll be prompted to submit a video. You can record it right there on your computer. It takes 60 seconds or less. And all you have to do is share something that you're grateful for that the guitar has brought into your life. In fact, for me, I should probably update mine. I'm very grateful that I have this wonderful relationship with my father that surrounds music. I'm so grateful for that. And I think the guitar has brought us even closer than we already were. In fact, I would also be grateful for the fact that the guitar brought Whitney and I together. In fact, I used to play at a coffee shop that Whitney worked, and lo and behold, now Whitney and I are married. It's pretty darn cool. So if you want to share your guitar gratitude, please visit guitargratitude.com. The video takes 60 seconds or less. It's super easy. Believe me, if I can do it, you can do it. In fact, if you don't like the first video that you record, you can just pitch it and go ahead and record another one. It's actually really easy. You can even take notes on the screen so you don't lose track, especially when the red light comes on. So make sure to visit guitargratitude.com to submit yours today. All right, I've got two guitars coming up that you need to be aware of, two guitar manufacturers and two guitars specifically that I think will Well, I think you'll really love both of them. I got one guitar from Bourgeois Guitars in Lewiston, Maine. I've got one guitar from Boucher Guitars in Quebec, Canada. In fact, it's so cool because geographically, these two guitar manufacturers are pretty close to one another. It's about a 5-hour drive, if my Google Maps calculation is correct. But it's so cool that these two manufacturers actually produced two very similar models that I had a chance to have both right next to one another and compare them. So what I would like to do is introduce to you each of these guitars, and I would love for you to run them through that 5-step evaluation that we talked about at the beginning of today's show to see which one you would like, because I'm gonna ask you to vote in the comments. But let me go ahead and set up these guitars. Now, this first guitar we're gonna look at is a custom Bourgeois OMSC. It's an OM guitar, OM size guitar. It's a 25.5-inch scale length, but it is a 12-fret cutaway, meaning the neck meets the body at the 12th fret. It positions the bridge a little bit lower on the lower bout, opens up a little bit more resonance, a little bit more tonal offering, and this particular guitar, in my opinion, is gorgeous. I'm biased because it is my personal guitar. It's got a torrefied Italian spruce top, Cocobolo back and sides, master grade Cocobolo back and sides, and in my opinion, it's very stunning. And before I let you hear this guitar, I just want to, again, I want to say a huge thanks to Matt at Eddie's Guitars for helping me design this guitar, James and Dana and the entire Bourgeois crew. They make really stunning instruments, and I'm very, my experience was fantastic, so I just want to thank them. But without further ado, that's 4 or 5 times I've said that now. Without further ado, I want to jump into this guitar. So let's have a listen to this custom OMSC from Bourgeois. So let's dig into the specs of this guitar. On the top, we've got torrefied Italian spruce, which is quite responsive. It took the torrefication the torrefication made it look really vintage, which I totally love. Also on the top, we've got an ebony bridge, bone bridge pins, bone saddle. We've got the DB signature herringbone inlay, which is very organic feeling. It's all kind of different shades of wood. It matches the rosette beautifully. And then on the back, the back. We've got master grade Cocobolo, which is very similar to rosewood in its sonic characteristics, but a little bit more heavy on the overtones. This guitar has sustained for days, and I attribute that, of course, to the Cocobolo as well. Around the entire body, we have Cocobolo binding set off in a white purfling. It's like a wooden colored purfling. It's probably maple of sorts, and it's beautiful. It reminds me of a violin. The neck is a 12-fret neck, so that means it meets the body at the 12th fret, and we have a cutaway, which is really nice because it allows you to have access to the higher frets, but along with this 12-fret neck, it actually positions the bridge lower on the lower bout, which opens up the entire top for extreme resonance, and that's one of the first things I noticed with this particular guitar. We've got a 25.5-inch scale length, an 1 3/4 bone nut, a solid peg head with Bourgeois inlaid in bone, which I thought was just cool to look at on paper and even cooler to see in person because it has that nice kind of organic cream color. We've got Waverly tuners with ebony buttons that function oh so smoothly, and with this particular guitar, I use a lot of alternate tuning, so it's nice to have tuners that are pretty exact and function so fluidly. All right, now you have a sense of how that guitar sounds. I want to share with you another guitar that's in the same category that shares a lot of the same specs. But before we get to that, that guitar that you just saw, the Bourgeois, has a very awesome story that I'm going to share with you a little bit later when I ask you to cast your vote between these two instruments. So I'll go ahead and share that with you here in a moment. But let me introduce to you this guitar from Boucher Guitars. This is the J.P. Comier signature model from Boucher Guitars. Robin Boucher and J.P. Comier got together and they designed this guitar to JP's specs. Now, this has such a cool story because prior to this instrument, the J.P. Comier model, Boucher did not offer a 12-fret cutaway guitar. It simply didn't exist in their lineup, and now it does because of JP and Robin getting together and designing this thing. It's a gorgeous guitar. Torrefied Sitka spruce top, I believe. Make sure my notes are correct. Yeah, Torrefied Sitka spruce top, Indian rosewood back and sides. Really cool, almost a Gibson-esque pickguard. Really subtle but very kind of stately appointments on the headstock. A slotted headstock. Very cool. And again, it's a 12-fret cutaway, meaning that bridge is scooted down on the lower bow to give it a little bit more presence, a little bit more bass response. So let me introduce to you this Boucher J.P. Comier artist model. Here it is. On the top, we've got torrefied Adirondack spruce paired with X bracing. On the back, we have an absolutely beautiful piece of East Indian rosewood. Around the entire body, it is bound in koa, which sets off the rosewood, which sets off the beautifully colored Adirondack spruce top. The bridge is ebony, the saddle is bone, the pins are also ebony. We've got this gorgeous abalone rosette around the sound hole. The fingerboard is also ebony. We have an 1 3/4 bone nut, a 25.5-inch scale length, which I'm gonna dig into here in a little bit, and the headstock, which I think steals the show with this guitar. This guitar has a slotted headstock. Boucher is inlaid in mother of pearl, and you've got a really cool kind of almost vintage motif on the headstock overlay. That split diamond inlay kind of flanked with almost like a Martin kind of Foden style inlay. Really gorgeous to look at. You've got Gotoh slot headstock tuners, which function fantastically. The neck is a beautiful piece of mahogany. Now, I don't normally say this, but this particular mahogany is almost purple. It's so dark and rich. You've got that classic volute on the back. Certainly one hell of a guitar, and a guitar that really stunned me. There's subtle attributes of that guitar that just made me say wow. Even the mahogany that was used on the neck had this rich brown, almost to the degree of a purplish hue. It was just gorgeous, and I think the craftsmanship is stellar. Before we go on in evaluating these guitars, I do have to say this, a huge thanks to the folks at Soundpure, because that guitar, that J.P. Comier signature model from Boucher, actually made its way over to Bozeman, Montana, and then that was its pit stop, and now it is over at Soundpure. So if you're interested in that guitar, go ahead and check them out. Really great offering of Boucher guitars, and I'm really impressed with the folks at Boucher and the guitars that they make. Really amazed. In fact, the Heritage Goose still sticks out in my mind as one of the best 12-fret guitars that I've played, non-cutaway guitars that I played. But that's a whole nother story. That's a tangent I don't have to go on. Let's get into evaluating these guitars. So here we are. You're faced with two guitars that are nearly identical. You've got a 12-fret neck to body joint, a cutaway on both, OM size on both. The only difference, we have some subtle spec differences. We've got torrefied Sitka spruce on the Boucher and torrefied Italian spruce on the Bourgeois. And then on the back and sides, the Boucher has East Indian rosewood and the Bourgeois has master grade Cocobolo, which is kind of like rosewood. It's actually commonly referred to as Mexican rosewood. So two varieties of rosewood, two species of rosewood. By no means am I a tonewood expert, but I do know that they're similar. So both have a 25.5-inch scale length. So which one do you like better? Which one do you think looks better? Which one do you think sounds better? I know you can't comment on playability because you haven't played either of them. Which one do you think is more versatile? Which one do you think is more inspirational? Well, let me weigh in on this because I'm attached to both of these guitars because I had them in the same room and I had a chance to evaluate both of them. And in my opinion, in my evaluation of these guitars, for the reason or for the way that I play, to me, the Bourgeois wins. But that doesn't mean the Boucher is a loser by any means, and I'll get to that in a moment here. But to me, the Bourgeois looks amazing. And I'm, of course, biased because I designed it. I picked out the appointments. So, yeah, I think it looks amazing. That's just my opinion, though, right? In terms of sound, the Bourgeois offers a little bit of a depth of tone and a larger overtone set that really reacts well with the alternate tunings that I use it with, and also the kind of fingernail finger picking that I tend to use on it as well. I use that technique almost exclusively with that guitar, and it reacts really, really well. It's got great depth of tone, and in fact, it records really well. It's not the loudest guitar by any means, but it's a very rich, robust sounding instrument. In fact, I use that Bourgeois OMSC almost entirely on the album that I released back in February. And I thought it just recorded really, really stellar. In terms of playability, I think the Bourgeois plays like butter. It just, right out of the box, I was amazed at how great it played. In terms of its versatility, I don't think the Bourgeois is all that versatile, but that comes with the caveat that I was looking for a very specific modern fingerstyle type guitar. And then lastly, inspiration. The Bourgeois, in my opinion, is incredibly inspiring because I helped design it. I have this story, like I was with the guitar from birth. It's the first time I designed a custom guitar solely for me, meaning it wasn't going to go to a shop. I've designed other custom guitars before, but it wasn't for me. It was either for customers or to just try out a certain specification combination. But this was specifically for me. So in terms of inspiration and kind of that X factor, this guitar has it in spades. But now let me touch on the Boucher, because I don't want the Boucher to come off as the quote-unquote loser here, because I don't think it's the loser at all. The Boucher has incredible volume and fantastic projection. In fact, if I was looking for a guitar to take to a live jam and play my songs, I would pick the Boucher hands down, because it has the volume, it has the projection, it has this wonderful presence. And also, huge mark in the versatility category for the Boucher, in my opinion. It flat picks like a dream. That guitar really is, that Boucher JP Comier is a very much a Swiss Army knife type guitar, meaning you can finger pick it, great, it sounds awesome. You can flat pick it, it sounds great as well. Great response, the notes kind of explode off the soundboard, and it's just a extremely versatile guitar. In fact, if you've ever seen JP Comier play, I think you'll realize why he chose the spec combination that he did, because he flat picks insanely well, he finger picks insanely well, he plays Celtic tunes, he plays classic fingerstyle tunes. I mean, his style ranges across the map, and I think his artist model, the JP Comier Boucher, really is a perfect fit for him and his approach. I think it's a great Swiss Army knife. So that's kind of my evaluation of those two guitars, but I'm dying to know what you think. Which one, if you run it through that framework, go ahead and rate it in the comments if you can. And if you want to declare a winner, please do that as well. I would love to hear your thoughts on those two guitars paired next to each other, because I think both builders I admire a whole bunch. And I would love to hear your thoughts on those guitars, because I'm obviously very, what's the right word? I lost the word. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm very opinionated because I've had intimate knowledge with both of those guitars. I've had a chance to really sit down and play them in the same room under the same circumstances. So I would like a little outside perspective, I guess, is what I'm asking. So let me know in the comments below. All right, well, holy smokes. We've seen a lot of guitars today. We've learned how to evaluate them. But now we have to wrap up the show, and I have a piece of Guitar Geek trivia for you. Well, your answer to the Guitar Geek trivia question. Now remember, we were talking about in your trivia question Dana Bourgeois and who else he made guitars for. Dana is a fantastic builder, a wealth of knowledge, and just as a quick reminder, here is your Guitar Geek trivia question. Prior to setting up operations in Lewiston, Maine in 1992, Dana Bourgeois built and prototyped acoustic guitars for Martin and what other builder? Was it Bob Taylor? Was it Ren Ferguson? Was it Paul Reed Smith? Or was it Preston Thompson? Well, if you answered C, Paul Reed Smith, you're correct. Paul Reed Smith was looking to expand his electric guitar business by introducing an acoustic model. Smith, having seen a single soloist model at an Association of Stringed Instrument Artisans convention in Pennsylvania in June 1990, approached Eric Schoenberg and Dana Bourgeois, who built the soloist model, regarding purchasing their endeavor. Ultimately, Bourgeois thought it was feasible while Schoenberg did not. As a result, Dana went to work for Paul Reed Smith, designing an acoustic guitar. Dana Bourgeois built 11 Paul Reed Smith prototypes, an original design he called the Jumbo OM Cutaway. When the PRS acoustic plan was canceled at the end of 1992, Bourgeois opened Dana Bourgeois Guitars in Lewiston, Maine, with the Jumbo OM Cutaway as the centerpiece of his line. Pretty cool that he took that model that he designed for PRS and said, you know what? I'm gonna base this is gonna be the centerpiece of my own line. Boom. And Bourgeois Guitars was born. Pretty cool, awesome little factoid, and makes me kind of feel even closer to that custom OMSC. But there you go. Another factoidal nugget for your cornucopia of factoidal nuggets that you collect here on the Acoustic Tuesday show. Somebody had asked about this Hodag mug. And while I am not from Wisconsin, I used to, when I was little, I'm talking 5th, 6th grade, we had a cabin in northern Wisconsin, and I'd go up hunting with my dad. And another Acoustic Tuesday viewer actually heard that story and sent me this Hodag mug. So pretty cool stuff, the mythical beast of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Anyways, let me give you a sneak peek into what's going to happen next week on Acoustic Tuesday. Next week on Acoustic Tuesday, we're going to celebrate a singer-songwriter that took common words, common language, and transformed them into some of the most profound and impactful lyrics ever. Yes, next week we're going to dedicate Acoustic Tuesday to John Prine. His songs, his lyrics, his gear, the life and times of John Prine are going to be celebrated next week on Acoustic Tuesday, and I want you to check that out for certain. You can catch Acoustic Tuesday, of course, every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time here on YouTube, and of course, for your Acoustic Tuesday fix in between Tuesdays, please visit acousticlife.tv, where you can do a deep dive on anything I've ever featured on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for being a guitar geek, and remember, Guitar Geeks Unite. I'll see you next Tuesday. Take care.